Now we're going to do Azure versus PartinG. If you don't know what that is match 6, right? Here's the original link you can go follow. Bang back 6. Which you can see in the commands. You can also see them by using bang Supercup or bang map list, or bang map list will give you an idea of what the maps are that we are actually playing. We're going to swap this over. Yep, here. And we're going to go ahead and revitalize. And now we have PartinG versus Azure. And by the way, PartinG goes on to completely dominate all of his opponents in seemingly ridiculous fashion. And this is one of those games where I want you to note that a loss can still be instructive. Because we saw Azure versus Theory on Broken Crown Hinterlands, and you could tell yourself, you could imagine to yourself, well, the qualitative difference between players means that, like, this wouldn't happen again, or like, that's just like one interaction, man. It's not like a habit. There's not like something that you could take from that. First off, there would be, even if it was just a solo isolated incident. But secondly, we can watch this and see that Azure's game plan on Broken Crown Hinterlands just looks sick for like the first, I want to say, like 8 minutes of the game. It just looks like the natural is a very exposed area. So, yep, here we go. Upper right hand side is Azure. He's very like, get my expansion later, get attacking units now, go around the map, hit you with that good. And we're not going to see any kind of nonsense from him, not on this game, not on this map. Versus PartinG. PartinG has done one vault expand pretty much the entire game. Pretty much the entire event, actually. The proxy. My ancestral recall's like plastic card holder is actually cracked. That's nuts. So here's the thing. I think this is exactly what you do with the scout. Right? I think what you do with the scout is you really, please tell me, okay, he doesn't quite get it, but you attack the workers that are on Therium, right? You attack the workers that are on Therium, and then you kind of celebrate. It makes sense, by the way, why that building is placed the way that it is. If you're Infernals, you know that you have to worry about a starting scout, so might as well place the building in a way that makes it more difficult for your opponent. I do think that the scout could have come back. I know that the scout would love to go around and get the pickups, but the thing is that whenever your scout is forced to leave by this brute, you'll be able to go get those pickups later anyways. And also, if you don't get them, right, but you force your opponent's one vault expand to actually split, and then you maybe deny some mining time or some expansion opportunity timing, and you like aggro your opponents. I think it's the difference between making yourself stronger and making your opponent weaker. And I think if you know that you're going for this natural like attack timing at the same instance that your opponent is going for their faster third, all delays that you can do are very good. Anyone will tell you, like even the most beginning player, like the most introduced to competency level player, right? The first, even a journeyman player will know, someone's being like really aggressive. If someone's really aggressive with you while you're trying to get your expansion, but they don't have a lot of units and they're just like really trying, then yeah, like, you kind of sense something's up. I actually think that the brute over here getting this is more of the opportunity. Like if the scout is tethered to the brute, it's not going to get a lot of damage done. You might be able to jack something, like creep jack something from the brute, and you might be able to tickle it as it's in the middle of its attack cooldowns, but really what you're looking to do here is just have another supporting unit and harass your opponent and make sure they're not just on move command to the other side of the map. And then force them to pay attention to it as it attack moves, right? Like move, turn around, hit, move, turn around, hit. But I actually think that this missed the opportunity to delay the natural a bit, especially since you know your attack is going to be focused on the natural. And this scout, you kind of need this scout to be alive for what Azure is doing. And so wouldn't it be better for it to be alive on your opponent's side of the map, bothering them, than away from the brute? Also, if you're too close to the Brute could just at this point split and say that's fine. Notice, however, that the Brute, and this is set on the cast, the Brute is going to notice that there are Hedgehogs on the way, and immediately it backs away. It knows that it doesn't have any opportunity to get lasting damage done there. It would require a fumble of your opponent's micro to kill it. And so the Brutes are going to slowly back away, and PartinG is going to do a little bit better job than some other players on getting the Vision Camp, splitting into Fiends, getting the Speed Camp. If you're wondering which one, by the way, the split is going to happen. So the Resource Camps are going to be taken here, and then there's going to be a Vision Camp right here that is taken by the Brutes, and then they're going to split into Fiends, and they're going to capture the Speed Camp over here. This is kind of the economic ability that you leave on the table, or the economic redress that you leave on the table for the Infernals player if you go right up to Hedgehogs instead of Scouts. But also this is PartinG playing well. And the first Hedgehog is going to be out, and there's actually some excellent abuse over here from the... Yep, and PartinG is actually just kind of nuts. He's going to be able to get this anyways. There is going to be a force split pretty soon. Yep. And they do want the Scout. They don't get the Scout. The Scout is actually going to die because it's a little bit faster, or the Fiends are a little bit faster. And now these are going to go over here, and they're going to go either to the Vision Camp, or if memory serves, yeah, is it the Vision Camp or the Speed Camp? Yeah, they go to the Vision Camp, and they start breaking it apart. And actually, the Hedgehog knows that that is likely what's to happen. I think actually on the smallest of micro levels, what you do here is you don't hit the Fiends because the veterancy doesn't matter as much as actually getting the Vision Camp itself. If you get the Vision Camp and they're already taking damage, the Fiends are going to die in the attempt of clearing your Vision Camp if you jack it from them, and you have higher damage potential. So kind of like 2022 Worlds, I'm pretty sure it was, where you just have Varus Q and you use it to snipe every Baron. Now, what's interesting about this is that the Speed Camp, you need 4 Fiends to take out the Speed Camp level 1, and the reason you don't want your opponent to take out the Speed Camp level 1 with Fiends is that they can actually use the Speed Camp as hit points, and I've talked about this before. If your units that die slowly over time, not on Veil, or not on Shroud, get extra speed, then they get to a point faster than they would otherwise get to it, which means they have more health when they get there. So it's effectively hit point regeneration. Or it slows hit point regeneration. Like, look how long it takes these Hedgehogs to clear this Vision Camp, and you'll just know. Yeah. Look how long it takes these Hedgehogs to clear these Vision Camps, and you'll just kind of know. Yep, and these Fiends are actually very intelligently moving around so that PartinG can figure out, hey, when are you taking this expansion? Like, what's going on here? And you might as well do the damage because your Fiends are going to die and you've already pre-committed them to not getting away anyways. Yep. And the Hedgehogs just go forth and they clear out all of the Vision, which makes sense because your opponent is a slow-moving faction when they're in Brute form, so you don't want them to have the extra ability to move forward and get some good stuff. I am pretty sure that once that Fiend gets to that health, you just run the Hedgehog away. Like, you might like the unit veterancy, but no amount of bonus health and damage, well, I won't say no amount, but it seems like the amount of bonus health and damage you get from veterancy doesn't actually encourage your Hedgehogs to be able to stand, fight, and deliver. And also, we need to know, this is something that wasn't talked about publicly, but do you actually get the benefit of veterancy when you attack with the Hedgehogs into a jungle camp or a creep camp? So we're going to see here that actually PartinG has already got a third base going up. He made the third while his opponent is making the natural, which means that he's basically continuing the situation. So I want to stress here that PartinG could have decided to go up in units and then grab the third base. If PartinG went up in units as the second base is going down over here for Azure, then Azure is basically losing the... He's going back to economic parity, but he's losing the military advantage. PartinG said, I would rather have the economic advantage than the military advantage and grab the faster third base, so he's extending the disadvantage of the military. He's extending the military disadvantage. Also looks like PartinG is more than comfortable with just saying if you put Shroud Stones in the right place, you can actually defend this quite well. What that does mean is that he's leaving himself some opportunity to have the third base being on the left-hand corner or on the tucked side, like this base. It's going to take a while for this base to actually go down in proper fashion because you have to get there, you have to set up structures, and you have to clear things, etc. But PartinG says, that's okay. It's basically committing to staying on the high ground portion of this corner of the map and says, I'm going to use Fiends and be faster than you afterwards. And look at this, 1, 2, 3, 4 Shroud Stones going down. This is part of why I really like the other base, the Z formation, right? Because you just have one attack path that you have to worry about, and then you only have 2 places you have to defend, and also your Shroud Stones are more concentrated. Also, one thing I don't know if PartinG expected or knew about, after all, he's only been back from military service. At best, optimally, you could say that he has been back from military service for a month by the time that this game has been playing, and he's been playing for every single one of those days. Seems unlikely. It looks like, however, this is a common enough tactic by Azure. I mean, after all, we saw Theory use this against Mixu in the role reversal in just the last match, and there's going to be not one, but yeah, there's going to be one rapid building structure here. And kind of the important part here is that I think you actually want to build both of these basically turrets at the same time, right? You want one you can shove your scout inside of so that you have vision, and then you want another one with an exo inside of it so you can knock the fiends out of their perch. The fact that he doesn't have the exo to knock the fiends off of the perch is actually going to be the exact reason that this attack fails to do anything meaningful in the last instance. Last time we saw Azure apply this, he was putting that, he put the shrine here into critical red health. He's denied mining time for a huge amount of time. He basically got his own third base up by the time that this third base was recollected. Right? So, like I said, first 5 minutes looking pretty good. The only thing you could say is I would like the exo to actually be here, but he's picking up the resource camp that's over here on the side as well. Right? He might as well because he's in the location. And multiple Shroud Stones and meat farms are going up over here inside of the main, but there is no exo. And because there is no exo, the fiends can actually, not the fiends, the imps can actually continue to mine, which means that this attack has yet to actually be dangerous. I know that sounds kind of nutty, like, oh my god, my opponent has hedgehogs on the low ground. They have a tower that can see what I'm doing. They're preparing to build more structures. Yeah, but has anything bad happened yet? Like, show me where the economy was hurt. I mean, you could say, one second, you could say, show me where the economy was hurt when we talk about, here, come on. Yeah, when we talk about 1, 2, 3 Shroud Stones, I can show you where the economy is being hurt. And the fiends that are getting in here is a nice little, is a nice counter attack. They're not going to do too much damage because of the overcharge and because of the structure that is already here, but this is basically PartinG saying, well, you know, the longer you're committing to this bit, if you were trying to get a third base behind this, I'd probably just kill a ton of bobs. And then when I get over here and I see that you just still have 2 bases, oh, that's fine. That lets me know that I am right to full commit into the defense of this location, right? Because you don't ever want to give up an expansion or leave it unmineable for a while of time, but it depends on what your opponent's game state is, right? Like, sometimes the trade is not as bad as it appears. Fiends must be... Okay, this fiend is actually going to get a kill. I love this fiend. Watch this. Watch this. Yes. 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 And it's just going to munch that thing all the way to death. And now the center tower is gone, which means the second tower has to now have a scout put inside of it. We still don't have an exo. And actually, even though we saw 6 to 8 fiends dumped over on the top side of the map by PartinG, that was economic and multitasking and focus-based damage. So now we have to ask the question, yeah, this fiend, by the way, is doing work. This fiend is fucking doing it. It's gonna die. Doesn't quite kill the Bob. The hedgehogs, for anyone who doesn't know, just can't reach up into the imps that are mining on the Luminite. So there's now another sensor tower. Now this tower is going up, and there wants to be an exo inside of it so it can start poking, but the timing has been missed. PartinG has 3 Shroud Stones that are ready to go. This is very different than when Azure did this against Theory and was able to kick off the Shroud Stones and harass them. And I want to note that while the hedgehogs look really good, the hedgehogs have a point of diminishing returns, and the diminishing return point is a straight-up combat fight. And it looked pretty good when it was actually like, 6 hedgehogs against 6 brutes, but it's looking really bad now that it's 6 hedgehogs Hedgehogs against a dozen Brutes, or against a dozen Fiends, rather. And the tower is going to go down. Once the tower goes down, yes, there's going to be a lot of dead units over here, but that's fine. Once the towers are down, the Hedgehogs have no staying power. They're as fast as the Fiends and vice versa, so they have to leave lest they get surrounded. And then all of the things go bad for Azure. Also, we're going to see, this is mentioned on the cast, there was in fact an EXO that was coming up, but it is unfortunately a lot later than we would have liked. Right? I do want to note, however, the EXO is doing a great job of being continuous and continuing damage, right? Its stand and deliver ability is pretty good. It's not that it has great stats. It's only got like 150 stats if memory serves. It only has 150 hit points. But the EXO is not... The Hedgehog has to fire and retreat, and it has these salvos that it works up. The EXO is just point. So it's actually the consistency of the army. I've talked about this before. Resource camps level 2 are going to go down for both sides, and why wouldn't you do that? But the problem is that this is only going to somewhat offset the cost of being in a situation where your third base is just now starting. Look at the multiple mobs that have been pulled over to the third base. That's going to be on the low ground on the left-hand side. And one of the reasons I don't really like this is that we know that Fiends are very, very good right now for Infernals. So I think that the choice of picking a base that can be... forces multiple avenues of attack is really bad. And what I mean by that is you can cut into the ramp of the natural and then go to the natural. You can cut into the ramp of the natural, go to the third. You can go and hit round the outside. You get this vision camp over here, then go round the outside. Yeah, it's not positive. It's not great. And we see 3 mobs. And why do we see 3 mobs? Because if there was a scout or a fiend that's attacking one of them, then one can repair, one can attack, the last one can continue to build the structure. Also, I'm pretty sure that there is while there's a decreasing rate on the rapid build, it's better to rapid build than to just build it slowly, especially if you're in a circumstance where your opponent's taking a 4th base and you are in fact not. Now, I think it's kind of interesting that PartinG is going for this as the 4th base location. He must assume that his opponent is actually doing the Z and is taking the base on the high ground, because that would make the most sense. Also, it's near a vision tower. It's something that is a vision camp. It's something he can control, etc. I still think it would be easier to defend because this 4th base actually doesn't. So if I want to talk about something. If you take this 3rd base, right, the one that's over here, or the one that's over here, it's easier for you to see. You see my mouse? You see my mouse? You see this? If you take this 3rd base, you're actually defending the same number of areas. You just go from defending the wooded area back here to defending this hill and covering both areas. I don't think the 4th base that PartinG is taking is actually covering more areas. He might not be concerned because of the game state. Like, his opponent is down a base, and he just deflected their military attack. That might be enough for him to say, it doesn't really matter where I take my base. In fact, if anything, I do want to expand towards you so that I can just hit your most defensible point over and over and over. Also, it's double therium, right? I want to stress that. It's not as safe as the other location, but... and it actually presents more areas that you have to defend, which is going to get a little cheeky, a little interesting for PartinG in a second here. But it's double therium, right? You can just have whatever dumb units you want. You want weavers, you got weavers. You want magmadons, you got magmadons. You want spriggans, you got spriggans. Like, that seems to be the operating theory. And also the 3rd base location is not being taken in a Z pattern over here for your boy, for Azure. Yep, and we do in fact see the Spriggans. It's mentioned on the cast. These are 200, 100 units that he says they focus, they work a lot like Mutalisks. What's interesting to note in this game is that the air units don't stack. They don't seem to, or if they have, then the trick had not been discovered or was being put into use, at least at this time by PartinG. It looks like there's a deliberate intention to make the air units more expensive in therium, have lower hit points, suffer for damage, not be able to stack, right? Things of this nature, right? So there are more costs associated with air units. But I want to note, remember that overtaxing ability that I presented previously? Yeah, these are going to overtax the Hedgehogs, because the Hedgehogs now have to deal with Fiends, which are kind of a big deal, Also, by the way, remember that thing I said? Don't expand near the health regeneration? This is going to come into effect in T- immediately, because all of these fiends are going to come over here. Yep. This is actually going to get cleaned up rather nicely because of the way that the hedgehogs are moving and the Bob overcharge happens. And I actually think Azure does a great job of defending all of this and only losing 2 structures and an overcharge. That's kind of insanely good. Like, I think he's actually got something there with the placement of those buildings, but the Spriggans here are going to be extremely effective. There aren't a whole lot of anti-ground units. Again, remember the Hedgehogs? The Hedgehogs are on Fiend duty because Hedgehogs are as fast as Fiends, and you can micro against them and not get full surrounded, and there's a reasonable chance that you could do some chasing if necessary whenever the fight goes badly and they try to leave. But Hedgehogs also have to be anti-air against these Spriggans in their base form or in Hunker Down. And Bomb Overcharge is kind of half effective here, in that the overcharge does give extra armor and defenses, maybe even life, but it's doing kind of a terrible job on the Bobs can't counterattack. One of the things that makes Bob Overcharge so good is that Bobs can actually turn around and fight, and they are themselves pretty good combat units in that scenario, like better than you would expect. But the problem is that, wait, that's low ground? That's actually low ground? That's kind of sick. So the problem actually here is that, yeah, these Spriggans did some damage, but the real problem is that look at the middle of the map. While you're all paying attention to this, while the cast is paying attention to this, and they are new units, we haven't seen them before. I think we only saw them on Jagged Maw with TLO versus Mana, and even then we only saw like 1 or 2 of them. Kind of like the pièce de résistance, like just the like little bit, this last little bit. Yeah, this Garnish? This Garnish would make it better? Yeah, just throw the Garnish in. That's what the Spriggans were in that game. This one, they're buying time, and they're not buying time, they're buying attention. While the Hedgehogs are over here, remember how I said Hedgehogs have to be the anti-air because Lancers don't hit up, Bobs don't hit up? While the Hedgehogs are over here, making sure the Spriggans are in a corner, there's a lot of Fiends coming in. Remember the first time that all of the Fiends were defended? They were defended because all of the Hedgehogs, 9 of them or so, were coming in into an area over that particular area of the 3rd anyways, coming back from clearing resource camps, and there were 2 towers there, and there was a Bob overcharge. So let's notice the difference on this attack as it gets changed over to the cast. So first off, we want to note a split of seemingly the comparable, maybe even greater number of units actually. The tower doesn't exist. Now there are Lancers here, but I want to stress that Lancers, again, pretty good in a straight up fight, pretty bad at like forcing the units to stay so that they can have a fight, and also there's not enough energy over here for the recharge. So the first time it took Bob recharge, 2 towers, and the positioning of all the Hedgehogs to clean everything up, and it was a very clean defense actually. This time, no Hedgehogs, 1 tower, not even fully useful, and no Bob overcharge. We're going to see the difference in how this manifests. Right? Does look like the, there we go. There's the Shroudstone cast, so that when any of these units die, they all are going to turn into Fiends, and it's all going to get real bad real fast. Are we going to see a lot of damage? Not that much damage, and the Spriggans actually don't do as much work as they would have liked either. So this should look pretty good for Parting. Or rather, this should look pretty good for Azure. I've been saying Mixu, Azure, Parting, Theory. I've been saying names the entire time. So, pretty good defense. The problem is, double Therium, still 4 base, and also the Spriggans are making sure that there's no 4th base over here. The Vision Tower over here is just asking the question, do you have access to the double Therium? Knowing whether or not the double Therium is being used on this base is the same thing as knowing as whether or not the base itself has been taken. Because if the base has been taken, it's being taken specifically for the Therium. So if the Spriggans don't see anything here, and there's nothing over here, you know that you're 4 base against 3. Yes, it feels bad to lose all of those Fiends. You essentially sacked a bunch of units when you're the economic player into the more defensive player, trying to get some resources out of it. So Fiend splits into the 3rd base are so far 0 for 2 for Parting. But I want to notice also that the map movement has kind of stopped for Azure. Azure doesn't have Hedgehogs moving out on the map because they're the threat of the Spriggans in the back. Azure doesn't have the Lancers like posturing aggressively because there could be a mass Fiend split. And any opportunity over here to try and take the fourth base is going to be stunted by the fact that Spriggans, Hedgehogs aren't over there where the Spriggans are all the time, and Spriggans can ignore terrain whenever they feel it's comfortable. Magmadons are also ready, and we're going to see another split that's going to happen up to this area over here. Also notice there's a temporary period of vulnerability, right? While the Spriggans are over here getting some damage, the Hedgehogs have to be up there to defend, and that means we see an overcharge just in case Bobs get harassed. There's going to be some Spriggans that are going to get tied out in the corner by the Hedgehogs, and we see some Fiends or Brutes that are going to split into Fiends over on the left-hand side. And they're going to attack the left-hand side of the third, as we now have, oh my gosh, a flock, a cluster. Yeah, of Spriggans over on the side, and they're going to go probably up towards the fourth base. They're going to see that there is no fourth base, and this is what all the information that PartinG needs, right? Oh, so you don't have a fourth base. My Spriggans don't see a fourth base. You don't have a fourth base. I'm 4 bases against you. I could go to 5th base, or I could just kind of wreck you. Remember, we still don't have access to overcharge on the left-hand side. Now, we do have 2 turrets up. Only one of them is properly manned by an Exo. And we don't see the Hedgehogs here, because the Hedgehogs have to deal with the Spriggans. And the Hedgehogs also have to provide some mobile turret defense for the attempted 4th base on the right side of the natural for Azure. So we're going to see some units do things. Yep. And as a bunch of Bobs go down, and the Magmadons are going to get wrecked, right? And it's just a question of if the Fiends can wreck this third, and if the Fiends can wreck the third, it's a huge win, and if they don't, it's actually fine, because the Spriggans are doing bonus damage, and there are yet more units coming in on the pipeline for PartinG. He knows now it's 4 base against 3. You can't defend against everything that could possibly be done to you. I'm just going to send Fiends to the left, Spriggans to the right. Oh my gosh, that's a sick reference. Fiends to the left of me, Spriggans to the right. Here I am in a macro game with you. Listen, it's more stuck in the middle with you, right? That song is sick, by the way. And the Fiends come in, and yet again, there's only the 1 turret, and yet again, there is an overcharge possibility, but the Fiends are just going to focus on the base itself. And now that the third is gone, it's 2 base against 4 base, and PartinG could just take the entire map and probably win with Mass Imp with Flame on if he wanted to. Doesn't have to. Yes, there is a lot of veterancy on these Vanguard units because they've been defending real good, but that doesn't matter if there is enough static defense all over creation that Azure won't be able to move out. Like, look, there's information over here that 4th base doesn't exist. The Spriggans have been checking on the right-hand side to make sure that 4th base doesn't exist. This 3rd base has to get remade. The Hedgehogs are still overburdened because they have to contribute to the defense in 2 locations, right? Yeah, this is looking real good. We do see a defensive tower start chunking the Spriggans, but they've done their job. And with this captured, yeah, this base being captured, there's going to be a capture of this vision camp at whatever time is convenient for your boy PartinG. And then he's just going to be really happy and say, yeah, I'm winning the game. All is good with me. Everything is wonderful, right? Gets stomped upon. Yep, even though they're very expensive in Therium, PartinG's Therium concerns have been solved by the fact that he got the double Therium for the 4th base. PartinG is now getting the 5th base as well. This is pretty much over. I mean, you can even see at multiple points PartinG's surprise is like, oh, is the game actually in that state? Like, you don't have this base over here. You don't have the other thing over there. I think it's just a testament to what PartinG was doing. Again, Azure had a pretty good game plan and a pretty good start. I think the lack of the early Exo in that Sentry Post was just enough to not make enough damage happen. And look, we even see that Bobs are oversaturated in the natural. They're not getting anything. They're oversaturated in the main. They're oversaturated in the Therium of the main. The 3rd doesn't exist. And this is just going to look like a campaign scene, right? This is going to look like a cinematic. As now notice here, no overcharge, and the Lancers aren't here anymore. No overcharge. The Lancers aren't here anymore. The Hedgehogs still have problems named Spriggans. Yep. And now even the attack on the natural, just to say like, hey, I can hit this too if I want to, and with the natural done, and then the 3rd is also going to have another serious swing at it. I don't believe it goes down. I believe it gets, I forgot, which game is this? Yeah, it goes down, never mind. So then now it's 1 base against, however many PartinG decides he wants on a D6. And that's game. It was game a little bit earlier, but there was some argument that there was counterplay, that there were things to do. Yep. And now we see some Doombringers, which upon landing become Harbingers, which is appropriate because they will be the Harbingers of Doom. I do like the medtechs, and there is a big attack over here on the side, but really this is the desperation of, I have to go out and attack you because otherwise I just kind of lose. I will note that actually the Lancer medtech Hedgehog army seems to be doing some good and getting some work done, but it's just not enough, man. It's just not enough to overcome the fact that even if he wins this fight, he has to fight through and kill 2 other bases with these units. And that seems extremely unlikely. There are now gaunts that are in here as well. I actually like the almost like respectful way that the gaunts are used over here by PartinG. It's, yeah, gaunts with Massed Infest is kind of cool and sick, but don't they stack value with the fact that I could just generate a bunch of fiends and use Shroud Stones to get that same ability? Just saying. So, I like it quite a bit. Do think the medtech is doing a lot of work here. Hedgehogs are showing their lack of value. I mean, we've talked about this before in cast or in analysis, but it makes you wonder that there should be like a magic number of hedgehogs after which you're like, I'm done making hedgehogs. That's it. I won't. It's very unlikely I get extra value from my hedgehogs in excess of this number, and Azure is going to say GG, and it was in fact a GG. I think the fact that Azure's plan looked solid even against PartinG, when PartinG has just like smooth criminaled his way through the entire Supercup, is why Azure's like first couple of minutes on Broken Crown Hinterlands are something worth thinking about and examining. Also, I think that his Secluded Grove Vanguard v Vanguard mirror is really good. And now we have the final map. I know I'm being a bit of a spoiler Nandy here, but it is the final map, and we can tell it's the final map because Reddit will not be quiet about the fact that Vanguard has not won anything against the Infernals yet. Right? In fact, there were people who saw the post that Spartak made on the Reddit and within minutes said, well, they had a Vanguard flare and their post was just, welp. So again, this is going to be the last one of the day. If you want, we can just go to match 6. You can see that this is PartinG versus Azure. There's the link in the main channel for Artosis Cast 2. And this is Secluded Grove, and man, Secluded Grove be a map for Infernals. We've talked about it multiple times, but like, it's really, really, really strong. And we're going to see if there is a cheese, some shez, anything like particular going on here, but the answer is going to be no. It's just a 1 vault expand. It's the same 1 vault expand that has happened throughout the rest of the game. Again, I think the scout would be better off trying to get in here and body block or harass the imp as much as possible, and then try to force the split over on that side. I know that it's a micro adjustment, but making sure that there is not a brute on the other side of the map is extremely important, because if you are doing this hedgehog expand and the brute gets there, sees that the hedgehogs will be on the way, they can leave, backtrack, and take control of things on the way out. Right? It's very important that you try to put them in the guessing game of, do I split or do I not? And bother their expansion attempts. I mean, Azure's, again, I think got the right idea here. It's going to be a Mech Bay expand or a Hedgehog expand. The problem is that, again, because of the way that the map is laid out, Infernals can just set meat farms, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, and it's not even been like the Steam Next Fest yet, but we've talked about this ad nauseum, but I'll go over it anyways in case any of you aren't playing a Cheerios deck in Magic the Gathering CEDH. You're just going to put meat farms and Shroud Stones on what, like, definitely either here and here, or here and here, or here and here, your choice of the 2 locations, and basically that indicates, do you want to go from 2 base to, like, do you want to go from 3 base to a fast 4/5, or do you want to go from 3 base to 4 and to a later 5/6? So Hedgehog is out, It's going to get some veteran C. You see that the Hedgehog only gets something crazy like 1/8 or something of what it needs from veteran C. And the brutes that we're backing out are just going to say, well, that's fine. We've gotten what we need to be done. Ooh, the range on that is kind of good. And so, not much more to say. Like I said, the brutes, once they realized they couldn't do anything against the Hedgehogs, they're going to back up and hit these objectives. I actually think this is role reversal and the Hedgehog should be doing this. I know that your whole point of the Hedgehog expand is somewhat predicated on get over there, do some damage, big time, and get it done. But you can kind of respect your opponent at this point. Respect the fact that they can deflect or dent or otherwise impair these Hedgehog expands, especially on Secluded Grove, and just say, you know what? I'm not even going for your stuff. I don't care if you have defenses. Like, I'll check to make sure you've got a couple of Shroud Stones. If I see that you have 4 Shroud Stones and 2 meat farms at those locations, I'm done harassing it. I could probably take out a building or a couple of Fell Hogs, but I'm just, screw that. I'm going to go across the map and get rid of everything else. And I think that's actually the right way to do it, because we can see that over here, PartinG is taking a Brute and said, well, the Brute's not any good defending at home, so I'm just going to take it and go capture all of the objectives on the map while you piddle away trying to hit Shroud Stones. I think PartinG has the better read in this scenario. I don't really blame Azure, because the same thing that makes this good on Broken Crown Hinterlands against Infernal also makes it very bad on Secluded Grove against Infernals. I don't even think that this is necessarily bad as an opening. It's just you have to say, oh, does my opponent have a respectable amount of defense? Oh, they do? Oh, okay, I'm just going to capture everything then. I'm just going to go get... I'm going to go grab the health camp, I'm going to go kill their vision camp, I'm going to go, like, do these other things, I'm going to go bust up this area, I'm going to go grab a fast third. Like you basically say, I have map control, I have few units. You don't have many units. You have more units, but they're slow, and you can't risk that I have more than I do. And I'm not going to pressure your front because you have the checkbox list number of things in the way. So I'm just going to go take your other objectives. Another reason, okay, again, for anyone who's new here, don't take the... I think it's bad to take the base that's next to the health regeneration. As soon as you find out that you're the economic person, your opponent is more aggressive than you, or your opponent has a better position with their army than you, or any number of other things that could go really badly, they just sit inside of the health regeneration. They ask you how you feel about your expansion decisions, and you tell them that I don't feel good about them at all, actually. It feels really bad. The problem here is that actually we have seen Azure have difficulties against Infernal on Secluded Grove once they get up the defense, and usually his response has been, we're going to go grab some Lancers. Right? And that way, if you come attack us with a mass fiend pop, I'll have Hedgehog's Lancers, we'll be able to deal with it, and eventually I will have access to Medtechs, and then Vulcans, right? That seems to be the path that has been decided upon by Azure on this base as they go, and we are going to see something here, which is that this sentry post idea, what's weird is that Azure, like... he's trying to do the same build that he did in the previous game, but Broken Crown Hinterlands is just a much better map for it. It's like, I'm going to, as I'm getting up to my second base, use tower pressure to deny one of your expansions. But there's not really an opportunity to do that on this map, and like... at all. So this is just going to be a reparo bot so that he can go in, poke the Shroud Stones. This is very much the squeezing water from a stone approach, right? Or squeezing blood from the stone, right? Like, I can't get through, but if I have something that gives more survivability to my units and I'm really aggro with my micro, I can get a little more damage done. And it's like, okay, but the best thing that happens there is that your opponent just builds another meat farm or another Shroud Stone, right, in respect to your micro and ability. Whereas I think the right approach here is not to just try and squeeze water from the stone, but go to the faucet. And the example of go to the faucet is just go somewhere else to get value, right? Like, by the time we're even seeing it here, even with all of this aggression and even with all of the defense-o-matics that we're going to see over here, got rid of one Shroud Stone, another one is being built, and the remaining one's at half health. But now there are enough brutes that PartinG can just say, if you come too close, the brutes will hit you. If you don't come close enough, the brutes will take the damage to their veil. Right? So I think this is at the point where you just say like, oh, I guess there just wasn't that much work actually getting done over here. Sorry. And the hedgehogs are going to be repaired, and there's going to be a bit more poking on the side. Like, notice that one brute nearly dies because of the 5 of them. That's really good, right? The pop means there from the animus, or the pop of the animus over there for the Shroudstone means that these units can't engage in a full fight. Otherwise, if they die, then they risk just snowballing the game into a losing position. It's perfectly fine. And the Fiends are going to go down here and say, okay, so surely you have a third base now, right? Surely you are, like, trying to get a third base. You're figuring out what to do. I've got all of my defenses, and my third base is alive and kicking, and I'm going to get rid of this stupid tower that you have here, or this stupid repair-o-matic. So surely you have a third base, right? And the answer is that unfortunately no, and unlike the previous game, Azure was not able to threaten meaningful damage. And there might be a reason behind that why this game is only going to go on for another 2.5 minutes relative to how long the first game worked. Again, people mocked it, didn't like it, but it's true. Broken Crown Hinterlands, it's not that it's good for Vanguard so much as it makes the game plan very hard for Infernals. And so, yeah, you get the Vision Camp. But I think that this is a little, how to say, this is the kind of thing that should have been happening earlier. I know there was a timer on the Vision Camp. I'm not saying that Azure should have rushed the time at which the Vision Camp spawned. That's literally impossible. But the idea of just go around the map or leverage your map control and just say, I can grab a third without having to make all these stupid defensive structures, right? There are going to be Fiends that go out here. The Lancer's going to be able to defend, and there's a Bob overcharge to make sure that not even the one Bob actually goes down. I think it would have been worth the Bob to... not do the overcharge, but, you know, if overcharge is your get out of jail free button, I understand why you become accustomed to using the get out of jail free card. I also like that PartinG is doing something here that Theory also did, or I'm not going to attribute ownership to the idea, but vice versa, right? Is put meat farms or some defensive structures up over here, just in case your opponent has some ideas of attacking the area that way. Makes sense to me. I wonder how high up the tech tree Hornets actually are in terms of cost and Therium for them not to be used over this. Now, another Shroudstone is going to go down, so again, there is some damage that's being done here, but it's all superficial at this point because the pop is gonna come, right? There's gonna be like 4, 8, 9, there's gonna be something between 18 and 36 Fiends that are just gonna pop here. PartinG does lose one of those. That's unfortunate. And there are some Bobs for repair, and some melee, some brutes attacking, and there we go, there's the huge pop. And the Infest, and I must in fact admit, every time I see Infest, I'm not really sure how strong it'll end up being, right? Like, well, but how relevant it ends up being. But, quite. Magmadon gets in here with the stun. Yeah, the Lancers are going to live, but they're actually then going to start falling. And this is all the army for kind of both players. And the problem is that the Fiends are faster and can always chase everything down. And so once there are Fiends, and there's the GG from Azure, once there are Fiends against the Hedgehogs, if there's a melee fight, we favor the Fiends. If there's a running away or retreating action, we say that either one can win depending on what the turnaround potential is of the retreating side. And then when we get to the point where there are Magmadons, now the speed question is out entirely. Hedgehogs are slower. If ever they turn to fight, then the Magmadons just slide in there. Slides can also ignore terrain. I really like the tech choice over here of the Magmadon. Because I've noticed that PartinG in neither one of these games really went for gaunts. He just favors using the animus from the Shroudstone. So if you're an Infernals player, that's something that you should be picking up on as well, is that PartinG, for whatever reason, doesn't think the infestability or the hemoglobin infusion of the gaunt is worth getting when you can just generate a lot of pressure on your opponent's side of the map, take a lot of fights, split a lot of brutes into Fiends, and then use that to generate from animus the Bring to Darkness, I think it is, right, where you just infest as a global. So he's basically saying throughout these games, PartinG is, I think that gaunts are a bit overrated. We saw him only get a sprinkle of them at the end of game 1, right? And that was after he had committed onto a double Therium fourth base and then used a lot of Spriggans to harass his opponent to death. And really, the Gaunts weren't actually even necessary. They were more like a round out of the composition. So excellent play over here on the part of PartinG. You gotta feel bad for Azure, and the reason I do particularly is that I think that Azure had a wonderful game plan for multiple maps against Vanguard, particularly on Broken Hinterlands or Broken Crown Hinterlands, but it just didn't manifest in anything successful. I do think that Azure. This will sound weird, and people will think it's like pure hipsterdom. And if you do think that, I can't even ride a skateboard, so I don't know what you're talking about. I don't think I've ever owned anything at Hot Topic, so take your hipsterdom elsewhere. I think Azure's first 6 to 10 minutes, map depending, of what he did on Broken Crown Hinterlands versus PartinG and versus PartinG and versus Theory is well worth studying, both in terms of the good, which was the initial pressure, and the bad, which was the expansion decisions. And I actually think that he just kind of outmuscled Mixu. And showed Mixu what was up on Secluded Grove, even though Azure ended up losing that set. And so I think he's got some interesting things to show on those matchups. PartinG just like kind of crushed everyone. There was no playoff necessary. He's just like gave everyone the giant, enormous space fisting. He's like, I have come back from military service. Let me introduce you to articles of the UCMJ. It's like, what's the UCMJ? The Uniform Code of must just destroy you. Right? He just completely wrecked everybody with seemingly only the time back from the military of a month to play, although wouldn't know what his personal life and details are. He seems to be on a tear, showing people what to do in Infernals. I actually think that some other people showed what was up. PartinG, for his games, showed a lot on how to defend one base aggression in the Infernals mirror. He also did a pretty good job of showing how you punish a Vanguard player who goes for a fast expansion. So lots of interesting games through the Super Cup. These will be thrown up on YouTube. Have a bit of a backlog as we tear things down through the Twitch and then filter them and put them up in high def and add all of the tags and information. If you liked watching this, consider liking, following, subscribing. If you donate some bits, I'll be ecstatic. I don't know really why you would do that, but if you do, I'd be very, very happy with it. I hope that you got a lot out of these games. If you do want to watch the original games with the full dulcet voice and wonderful casting of Artosis and the spectating of Mafu TV, you can certainly do that by going to Artosis Cast 2, where all of these games exist. If you use the commands over there for Bang Match 1 through 6, and then Bang Supercup, Bang Map Pool, you can see the information that leads back over to their channels and to their content. So thank you so much for that opportunity. I really enjoyed doing this. I look forward to seeing more games. And don't worry, just because we're out of games right now from the Super Cup doesn't mean that I will actually run out of things to talk about. If anything, going over these games has given me more thoughts that I am going to put out that will be highly contentious, but I think informative and at least food for thought. You might not like the taste of the food, but it will certainly be spicy. So if you enjoy spicy takes and lukewarm food, or spicy food and lukewarm taste, stick around at the stream. But not today. I'm done for today. So thank you so much for showing up. I appreciate you. Hope to see you again on the next one, and I'll be streaming again tomorrow. Time dependent. Bye.